Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome in to everyone listening or watching. I can never get this intro right, live or on demand. This is the Makeshift Managers podcast. Just like the intro, everything's makeshift. The points are made up and nothing matters. Redacted, we don't have the rights to that
Do
line.
not. Do not
Do
have the
not.
rights.
We're back. Division 3 out of 8. But we are so kind enough. We're going to take you guys all the way up to the Monday before football starts. So you're welcome. That's what you come here for. You come here to learn about what we think about divisions because what we say matters. I think.
To us, at least.
To us, at least. That's why we're here. So we're in the NFC North now. We're done with the West. We're done with the slaughterhouse that is both West divisions, for that matter. And we're moving on north. And of course, as always, we're going to start at the bottom with Devin's favorite head coach, Daniel Campbell.
Oh, man. If Campbell's chicken noodle soup makes you feel good on the inside, Dan Campbell makes players feel great on the outside. This man is fucking electricity. I remember last offseason going in through the preseason and training camps, he was talking about his coffee order. He gets like a Trenta cup of just espresso or some shit and just chugs it. He's infectious. Like, there's different types of head coaches and managers or there's different types of individuals that coach, manage, or help comment your teams. Dan Campbell is a player's coach in the best way possible. He was a former linebacker that played years in the NFL, high intensity, and he holds guys accountable. He had a team last year that played to a record of 3-11-1, and you would have thought they would have won 6 or 7 games just based upon how engaged his team was from week 1 all the way until week 17 of last year. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Detroit is going to be the winner of this division. I'm not even going to sit here and tell you that they're a guaranteed number 2 in this division. But I do think Detroit has nowhere to go but up. This is a team that has Jared Goff, who we have seen previously play to a very high standard in that Los Angeles Rams offense. That was obviously under the tutelage of Sean McVay. But he's a very talented player. He was a former first overall draft pick, which hasn't panned out well for most quarterbacks over the last half decade. I'm looking at you, Baker Mayfield, but I digress. Jared Goff is another. He's going to have his second year in this offense, hopefully a healthier year. And you have a lot of tools to play with on this offense. Austin knows, and everybody on this podcast should know by now, I love DeAndre Swift. He is a multifaceted running back that I think is going to have a massive year. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the biggest surprises coming out of the fantasy football community last year, emerging as Jared Goff's favorite target and the definitive wide receiver 1 out in Detroit. You had a year where TJ Hawkinson missed time, Goff missed time, Swift missed time. Every impact guy, it seemed, was not on the field except for St. Brown. Do I think the Lions can have Jared Goff and some of these key guys miss time and win 6 games? No chance in hell. But this is a team that has one of the best offensive lines in football based upon namesake and talent, and the defense is slowly but surely improving. You got a guy in Alex Anzalone out there playing linebacker that I think is a very good piece for this defense, and they're going to be healthier. And I just think, looking at last year's team and the output Dan Campbell got out of them his first year, I would be greatly surprised to see this team not finish with 5 or 6 wins comparatively to last year's roster.
And really, if you look at a lot of their games last year, they lost like heartbreakers. They were in a lot of games. Justin Tucker had to set a new NFL record to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is crazy. I'm looking at their games last year, and they played a war with San Francisco to start the year. They lost 41-33. They lose to the Packers 35-17. Yeah, okay, makes sense. They lose to Justin Tucker's insanely long field goal. They lose to the Bears. They lose to the Vikings. They get slapped by the Bengals. They look not too bad in SoFi. They pulling out tricks, fake punts, interesting stuff. And that's what you kind of got to do against these really good teams when you're just really bad. And props to Dan Campbell for just fucking trying it, dude. What does it matter if it doesn't work? You're not really expected to win this game in the first place. You know, they get slapped by the Eagles. They tie the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Mason Rudolph rain game. That was an interesting game. Lose to the Browns, lose to the Bears, and then they finally beat the Vikings on insanely last second play drive. They walk off the Minnesota Vikings. They lose to the Broncos. They mollywop Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, how that just can't happen for the Arizona Cardinals. But, I mean, Jacksonville beat Buffalo, so what can I really say? But Detroit finished the year 3-13 and won. There's really nowhere to go but up. I really think they can win about 5 or 6 games. I don't know how long it's going to take them to be a competitive ball club, but I feel like Penei Sewell was such a steal in that draft, and that's going to be so good for them for years to come. And you were right. A lot of their guys were not healthy last year. DeAndre Swift makes a lot of great plays. He's really electric. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Did I do that right?
You did it. You did it justice. I'll give you that.
Had a great, I wouldn't say second half, like last third of the season. Fantasy, was losing its freaking mind over St. Brown, and he had a solid way to finish out the year. But it kind of goes all back to Jared Goff. At some point, I don't know. Jared Goff's not the guy, right?
Well, that's the thing. For me in this roster and this team, obviously Jared Goff is not the guy. The Lions are paying for his albatross of a contract, but with the construction of the team and the talent they have around him, it doesn't matter that much because a lot of their guys are currently on lower scale deals and they're not competing. They're not going to deal with the same ramifications of a superstar quarterback second contract type deal that we're going to see the Cardinals deal with. The Chiefs are starting to live with. The Bills are going to deal with whenever you have to accent the best player in your team with adequate talent, which we will see to varying degrees how that works out for the best contenders the NFL has to offer right now. But Detroit's still bad enough to have a shot at getting their next guy. But they are adding talent that I think is going to fit in timeline well with whoever they're going to add. I think Detroit could finish 4th in this division. They're probably better suited to do so. As I mentioned with the Seahawks in our first division preview, there are certain teams that would totally benefit from cratering this year and trying their best to get that shot at CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. Another big part about this Detroit team is they were one of the worst teams at getting to the quarterback last year. They got their guy in this year's draft. Aiden Hutchinson, for lack of better terms, was essentially 1A in everyone's draft board until about a week or two before the draft actually happened, and the Jaguars selected Trayvon Walker. They got Hutch, the Michigan product that now is calling his home Detroit. I think he's going to provide some pressure off the edge that they just have not had in previous years. And if you're going to pair him with a guy in Michael Brockers at nose tackle, it's going to be a good combination. I need to see more from the secondary. Jeff Okudah finally has to start playing better, but I think they're going to be able to get to the quarterback in a way that they haven't. And if the secondary can't follow suit, it's going to be some tough sledding. But I would be very surprised if this team isn't pushing for 5 to 6 wins, just based upon the amount of passion that Dan Campbell can inspire within this team and just how bad some of their opponents are really going to be, especially in division. Because as good as the Packers have been over the years, I don't know where their production offensively through the air is going to come from, at least not yet. And as good as Minnesota can be any given year, I don't trust their depth. And I'm not sure if Kevin O'Connell can really elevate the offense to a point where the defensive inefficiencies are going to be highlighted. And if we're talking about Chicago, we'll save that for later because I don't see it. So Detroit has a myriad of possibilities and directions they can go. But the biggest thing for me is they have 3 out of the 5 most important aspects of football answered for the next 5 to 6 years. They've got a running back in DeAndre Swift, who I believe is going to be a top 10 type back at his apex, complemented with a guy in Jamal Williams, who was terrorizing their team for the better half of 4 years alongside Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
The tandem of Swift and Jamal Williams is severely underrated in terms of just a running back tandem. They both complement each other very well. And let's not sleep on the fact that they didn't just get Aiden Hutchinson in this year's draft. They drafted a guy who should be their wide receiver 1 for the next 6 to 10 years in Jamison Williams. He will not be playing to start the year, but whenever he eventually hits the field, he is electric. They've got guys in the perimeter, TJ Hawkinson. They added a guy in DJ Chark. This offensive unit is leagues better than it was last year. and you pair that even with Jared Goff under center, you have a line that features Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, and Penei Sewell. I'm not even going to attempt their right guard's name. Look him up. He's a stud as well. This offensive line can stack up against damn near any in the league, and if they have an accurate and proficient signal caller, I think they can beat a lot of teams. As long as they're keeping Jared Goff upright and he's going to have the same ratio he had last year from touchdown to interception, I don't see them beating themselves as often as people are going to think. This team should be surprising people.
I think their offense definitely showed flashes of really good last year. It's their defense that is really going to have to keep them in games too. And that's going to be really the story of this. I mean, it's the story for every team. Of course, your defense has to be good, but there's defenses that we always expect to be good and keep their teams in it no matter what. It's the defenses that we're looking at in the North, the Vikings, the Bears, the Lions, and maybe even when we get to the Packers. All of these kind of have question marks all over the defenses. How many shootouts are they going to be playing? We said it with the Raiders last week. The only reason why we put the Raiders in last at 9-8 is because we just don't know how many shootouts they're going to play, because you can't expect your offense to put up 30 to 40 per game. Your defense has to do something. And the Lions gave up the second most points last year. I get it. They were blown out a lot, and kind of you hit that slippery slope and blowouts where you just keep giving up points and you keep getting hit, and you're kind of just, I'm not saying guys aren't going out there and not trying, but at some point you're just like, fuck, dude, just take it all the way at this point.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And it's just kind of where I think they are. They, Goff, Swift, St. Brown, DJ Chark, Jameson Williams, Hawkinson, just they have a solid offense and they have a decent line to keep Jared Goff standing up. And Aiden Hutchinson is a great pick for them to get to the quarterback, which is always a huge thing. I'm a Cowboys fan. I know. But you have to get to the quarterback, especially Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to say they're going to beat Green Bay this year, but as long as they're competitive in games, I feel like they can finish third place, because when we get to the Bears feel like the opposite. The Bears feel like they're regressing, and the Lions feel like they're moving up. However slow it may be, they're moving up.
And I think a big thing for this team, and projecting where I see them going, this is an offense that is a professional football team offense. There are a lot of NFL professionals on this roster offensively, and I think that's really going to be paramount whenever we're watching games. They're going to be able to keep their offense on the field and give their defense a break in ways that they couldn't last year. I expect this team to be in games. I do not expect them to win more than 6, due in part to the fact that their defense still needs a lot of work. Because of the secondary questions that I do have, I think they are going to find themselves giving up a lot through the air. And even with Aiden Hutchinson, they still don't have somebody across from him at the left defensive end spot that I can put my full faith into. So as good as the offense could be and should be, I think their defense is going to leave a lot to be desired, which will lead them to losing a lot of games, even if they're scoring 20-plus points. I think this defense could surrender more points than most in the grand scheme of it. In terms of points per game, I expect them to be in the bottom half, maybe even bottom 10 teams.
Do you believe, I think bottom 10 is accurate, but do you believe that they need to be a bottom 5 team? I guess my question is, do you think they can get a 7th, 8th, 9th, maybe even the 10th pick in the draft and still be okay? Because it sounds like what they have to do with their top 10 pick next year is another defensive piece. I am personally not educated enough to know what next year's draft looks like in terms of the best coming out right now, but I feel like that's just going to be constantly what they need to do, is they need to spend a lot of picks next year on their draft even more, because it seems like a lot of their guys have stepped up on offense, and we'll see it this year. I think they are going to be a better offensive team.
So I'm looking at a mock draft from draftwire.usa today, and I'm just looking at how they see things projecting. So they have Detroit at the 7th pick, and they have Detroit taking Florida's quarterback Anthony Richardson. And out of the top 7 picks, I'll just list them out. Texans take C.J. Stroud, then Will Anderson goes to the Falcons. He's the next great edge coming out of next year's class. And then the Seahawks, who I think will have a top 3 pick next year because of how bad they should be, they're taking Bryce Young. After Young and Stroud, there is a drop-off, But if Detroit if Anthony Richardson comes out next year and is a Heisman finalist and Detroit can trust that, I think 7 through 10, if there's a guy at quarterback that I think projects well for them and they have faith in, take him. But if that's not there, they have to go secondary. I would be very surprised.
That's the thing. Jared Goff, I feel like as Detroit, Jared Goff is your quarterback the next 3 seasons. He's going to finish out his contract as the starting quarterback of the Detroit Lions.
It makes more sense, yeah.
There's no reason you could probably get, if you really wanted to get a quarterback in your top 10, if CJ Stroud or Bryce Young fell, then I would say, no, I understand but by or they want to move up and go get one, then sure. If you want to sit behind Jared Goff, that's fine. Sit behind Jared Goff for a year. I don't know what that's going to do for you. I don't know the science behind guys sitting in a year versus just being inserted in a year. And Jared Goff is not Brett Favre. Yeah. Jared Goff is not this, I feel like all quarterbacks can offer some mentoring one way or another. You know what it's like to be there. You know what it's like to get fucking blasted. Jared Goff is literally have been on both sides of the spectrum. He's a Super Bowl quarterback, and now he's the quarterback in one of the worst teams ever. Not ever, in a season.
He was like top 5 MVP finalist one of those years out in Los Angeles. It felt like he was having a great year. My thing with Jared Goff, and I think you hit the nail on the head right there in regards to the timeline for this team, they realistically, in terms of competing for championships, are about 3 to 4 years out. And to maximize their window, whenever the window fully hits, you don't want to reach for a rookie quarterback too early into this process, because if you can get a guy near this tail end after you've already solidified your defensive roster and adding guys at linebacker, adding talent at the corner positions, and even deeper into the secondary, because do I see DeAndre Swift being the running back for this team whenever they compete? Probably not, with how running backs are paid in the league. I think they will have a younger running back in 3 to 4 years that's going to fill a similar role to what Swift has provided, so on and so forth. But I do think guys like Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, even a Hawkinson will still be on the roster. And the line will still basically be similar to what it is now. Frank Ragnow is in his 20s. Taylor Decker is still in his mid to late 20s. It's a very young line. So I think Goff's contract is starting to fade out. If there's a quarterback prospect in 3 years' time, they're better selecting him as opposed to trading up for a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young, even as talented as they may be. Because the value of a Bryce Young and a CJ Stroud is having that window that we see now with the Chargers. They looked into the 6th pick a couple years back. They got Justin Herbert, but the team was bad because of injuries and bad luck. You see what I'm saying? If you have a solid enough team during that quarterback's rookie scale contract window, i.e. Patrick Mahomes, you're a Super Bowl contender off rip if they can actually produce.
Right. And I think the final note for me for the Detroit Lions is that I think this is a really good year for Dan Campbell to establish himself as a competent isn't the word, but it's what I'm going to use in this situation, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm calling Dan Campbell not a competent head coach. But I think this is a good year for Dan Campbell to show that he's a good play caller and he can actually win games on a good level. He has the emotion and he gets you fired up, and you will run through a wall for that man, but that only goes so far. That is one aspect of being a head coach, is rallying the guys and being like, yeah, we'll fight for this dude. I'll fight for Dan Campbell. I'll fight for him right now. I don't care. But he's got to show that he has the competent side of, like, you had your ballsy plays last season. You had your little tricks. You had your little fun. Now it's time to go out and win football games. Not saying he was going out there trying to lose football games. He's not the Miami Dolphins, but I feel like that's kind of where he is in year 2.
There was a myriad of complaints whenever Dan Campbell got the job. He had no head coaching experience. There were other candidates that people thought deserved a chance before he did. And I think
you mean like the job search all over the world in a nutshell? Sorry, you need experience.
But you get what I'm saying in terms of like Dan Campbell's hiring. It was under not controversy. It wasn't like whenever Doug Peterson got the Jacksonville job over certain other coordinators. But Dan Campbell's hiring wasn't everyone's cup of tea at first. But he won over the locker room, and I think he's won over the city of Detroit. This year and this team are going to be his opportunity to win over the NFL at large. He's proven it to the fans. He's proven it to the players that play for him. Now let's see it substantiate in a way where this team is no longer the bags over the heads of the fan base type beat. Let's see if they can actually compete and be respectable in the grand scheme of all 32 teams.
All right, so that'll do it for the Lions. We'll move on to the Chicago Bears. One of the teams that I feel like really have gotten worse over this past offseason, and it's going to be a long road for the Chicago Bears. They went 6-11 last year. Excuse me. Drafted, moved up, got Justin Fields, went out and got their guy. They lost Allen Robinson. I almost said Alex Robinson. I don't even know who that is. Their defense has lost some pieces. Their O-line has lost some pieces. People are they're taking calls about Tevin Jenkins. They're Justin Fields, like most rookie quarterbacks last year, just got thrown into the fire and said, good luck. I'm not saying Justin Fields is a bad quarterback, but he does have a long way to go. But, of course, now that you have Matt Nagy gone, you brought in Matt Eberflus. It is going to be a long road for the Chicago Bears. They've traded Khalil Mack to the Los Angeles Chargers. I want to say San Diego every single time. I don't know why. Please don't. What did they even get for Mack? A 5th-round pick?
Yeah.
Right?
They got a 2nd-rounder and a 5th-rounder, and then the Chargers
2nd and a 5th.
traded back for a 2nd, so it technically was just like a 5th-round pick. They traded back in the drafting. Yeah, it was just...
You look at this team and nothing really jumps off the page. David Montgomery is like the best 5th-round fantasy running back ever. He doesn't really jump off the page, but he gets the job done. Past that, you don't really have much. Khalil Herbert was cool for a week. With Allen Robinson gone, your number 1 is Darnell Mooney. Your number 2 is Byron Pringle. There's going to be a lot of experiments. I think Justin Fields is going to be running a lot, and I think Justin Fields is going to take a ton of hits. There's just Roquan and Smith and Eddie Jackson are the basic 2 names that I recognize on this defense at this point. I look at this defense, and it is no longer the Chicago Bears that we have known to have a solid defense, to be always in the top 5 and defense first. This isn't Jay Cutler's team anymore. This isn't, all Robbie Grossman, all these guys. This team is going to be really bad. I think this team is fighting for the number 1 spot. I don't know what they're going to do with the number 1 spot. I think they're at least going to be top 3 if Houston or the Jets find a way to find themselves in number 1 or number 2. But there's just not a whole lot to say here. Cole Kmet is like the best tight end in fantasy for the past 3 years, apparently, from what I keep reading. There's just like I keep looking at the team and there's nothing really to say about it. Matt Nagy's finally gone. Everyone got their wish. He's finally gone. But what's next?
Yeah,
a lot of losses.
The Chicago Bears are in a really tough spot. They wasted. I wouldn't even say they wasted. I think Chicago really jumped the gun a lot of the time. They made a move in trading for Khalil Mack that hasn't panned out well for either side. I don't think anybody technically won that trade. Justin Fields last year had a completion percentage under 60%, threw for less than 2,000 yards, averaged less than 200 yards thrown per game, had more interceptions than touchdowns, and that's just to name a few things. He had the worst head coach in football, for lack of better terms, of Matt Nagy. He wasn't doing him any favors. He couldn't beat out Andy Dalton for the starting job until about week 4 of last season. I'm not sold on Justin Fields. I think he's talented, yes. I think he could play a very solid quarterback position in the NFL. Then again, it's not like his alma mater has given me many examples of players coming out of Ohio State and flourishing at the NFL level. We have not seen it. A big thing for me is just the lack of weapons. One thing about the Kansas City Chiefs and their roster right now is Patrick Mahomes is an NFL MVP. You could throw out Darnell Mooney. Essentially, whenever Tyreek Hill couldn't play, he had Byron Pringle the last 3 years, and he made Byron Pringle look electric in stretches. I don't see Justin Fields doing that. I think Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet are all he has through the air, and I'll be surprised if N'Keal Harry can finally provide any semblance of a first-round pick this season, because obviously in New England it was not working out. This is a team that's been selling for the last 6 months to a year. They traded Khalil Mack for highway robbery. As a Chargers fan, I spit out the drink that I was drinking. I was on the road and the news broke, and I was like, you're fucking kidding me. I was like, we got Khalil Mack for this? It was completely insane. I had no idea why we were able to get a guy in Khalil Mack that is that talented for that little. And it doesn't end there. They've let go of numerous guys, especially in their secondary. Kendall Fuller was a guy that they let walk. I just see them letting more and more talent slip through the cracks, whether it be through trade or just outright releasing people that aren't valuable on their contracts for the window they now have. We saw it with guys like Odell Beckham Jr. We'll see it again this year with a lot of guys that are on the buyout market. This was a team that was so bad. A top 10 receiver, give or take, and Allen Robinson gave up. He stopped wanting to play football. And that is a really bad environment for anybody to be brought up in. So do I expect Justin Fields to improve? For the Bears' sake, hopefully. Because if he doesn't improve, this team could win 3 games. And for me to sit here and think Matt Eberflus is the answer, I didn't know who he was until they announced him as the head coach, which is something that is hard to say for me. I feel like I'm pretty engaged with most teams and their coordinators. Just whether we're looking at the roster, Darnell Mooney, Byron Pringle, Velus Jones Jr. Okay, Darnell Mooney has shown flashes of being an elite separator, but beyond that, his 1,000 yards last year was great, but who else was Justin Fields supposed to throw to? And that's another thing. Without Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney is going to have to get open. He is going to have to produce his own targets. He's going to have to produce his own separation. There's nobody else in this offense to draw people away from Mooney, and he will see most of the double teams. Their offensive line, I'm not super sold. Riley Reif is solid, but everybody else, I'm like, okay. And the defense, they have talent. But do I expect the talent to be there by season's end? Probably not. They've got guys in Roquan Smith and Robert Quinn that are all pro caliber players that are wasting their time in a defense that just isn't good enough to fully carry a team to the postseason. Because it was one thing whenever Mitch Trubisky was commandeering the offense, he could throw it around a little bit, and they gave him weapons. They're not giving Justin Fields much to work with. And whenever you're trading away guys like Khalil Mack, this defense, at least the playmaker, is going to have to work double time. Because Robert Quinn is a great edge, but you're pairing him up with Trevis Gibson. Like, who?
And here's the thing, too. If you're trading Khalil Mack for a 2nd and 5th round pick, Robert Quinn had a really good year last year.
18 and a half sacks.
He had 18. That's a lot. That's a lot of sacks. If you're going to trade, I don't know how I overlooked Robert Quinn in the depth chart. That's on me. I'm just blind. But if you're going to end up trading Robert Quinn, which seems like the inevitable response at this point, because there's no reason to hang on to him, if especially we're right of like between 3 and 5 wins for the Bears.
Yeah.
What's his worth? A third?
I think you could probably get
you
could probably get a 2nd and a 3rd for Robert Quinn. Roquan Smith is the guy for me. He is so good. He finished last year. He had 163 combined tackles. Roquan Smith is a difference maker. And a big thing for me is this secondary, the corners suck, but the safety duo is solid. And I think Eddie Jackson could improve a lot of other team secondaries. This team has pieces that are going to be valuable. And this team is not really going to be valuable for the next 2 to 3 years. So they have to cash in on these talented players because no one's going to re-sign here in terms of these older players that are veterans that are proven talents. Robert Quinn has no reason to re-up his contract once he's gone. Roquan Smith would be absolutely insane to stick around after he watched this team waste the prime years of a defense that was top 5 in the league. And their 6 wins last year were with Chicago being one of the best defenses in their division, if not the NFL. And the best years of Chicago Bears defense are behind them in this window. It's nowhere to go but down for the defense, and they have to have the offense go up from here because if it doesn't, they can crater. It's just so many questions, so little answers. And Matt Eberflus, you're not going to get fired this year, but man, if Nagy had a hot seat, I just don't see the pressure being alleviated because you have the quarterback of the future. Like it's just a bad situation.
Yeah, and they put up the 4th lowest points last season with 3.
Yeah. For as talented as their offense was on paper last year, they did not do much with it. Like Allen Robinson, when he just went to the Rams on a pretty team friendly deal, and he's produced with guys like Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky for the bulk of his career. Sit here and say Justin Fields couldn't do anything with him. Obviously, Robinson played a part in that in his effort, but I expect A-Rob to have a killer year this year. And I think we're just going to continue to see that because the Bears don't provide much for these impact type guys. There's not value for them to be there besides dollar signs. And there's no point in overpaying guys just to keep them around.
Yeah, it really feels like the Bears are really stuck in a perpetual loop of there's nowhere really to go at this point, because even if by the time you're ready to try and compete, you take right now, you fast forward 3 to 4 years, let's say you're ready to compete. Well, shit, now you got to pay Justin Fields. So you like this time where you're going to build up all these guys, and then you're going to have to give your quarterback half your salary cap, it feels like these days. And you're going to hinder yourself even more. The Bears don't. This is one of the few teams that I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel is just starting. You have just entered the tunnel, and I don't know when it ends for them. Yeah. And it's gonna be bad. And I don't know what the next drafts look like. They're not going to draft a quarterback. They're not taking Young or Stroud. So who's next? How long can David Montgomery keep going? My man is a tank, but he's getting beat up.
David Montgomery, for as good as he's seemed in Chicago, he's the benefactor of volume, not so much health and not so much efficiency. Regardless of how many times they're giving him the rock, he averaged less than 4 yards per carry last year. Khalil Herbert was far more efficient. It's just he's the only guy on this offense that you can look at and say, hey, we know who he is. Hey, he's provided value. And if they had a better offensive line, maybe they could pound the rock and control the clock, and hopefully their defense wouldn't divulge down to Swiss cheese. But with this offensive line, I don't see them winning the line of scrimmage week by week. I see them having Justin Fields kind of run for his life and praying to God David Montgomery can fall into the end zone more times than he loses the ball. And it's not a winning formula.
So, yeah, for me, the Bears are finishing last, and it's not particularly close. Bottom three.
They
have
team
in the NFL.
They have the worst quarterback in the division, and I don't think that's a hot take. Worst quarterback in the division, probably the worst offensive line, and arguably the worst defense. Detroit's defense might be worse. I think for namesake alone, the Bears' defense is probably a bit better. But offensively, I think the Lions should be a middling offense, like league average at absolute best, top 20 at absolute worst. But the Bears just, I don't see it.
All right, let's move on. Minnesota Vikings. It's time to skull. They finished 8-9 last season with a net point of -1. A true 500 team. They almost got there. We spent a lot of time last year talking about the Vikings. It seems like every single week review we were doing, it was Kirk Cousins this, Kirk Cousins that, Kirk Cousins this. Kirk Cousins had a really good year last year.
Best year of his career.
Yeah, he had a career year. 4,200 yards, 33 touchdowns, 7 picks. And his defense let him down a lot of the times. He was without Adam Thielen for most of that season. Justin Jefferson had a great year. Dalvin Cook was tearing up some defenses for sure when he was healthy. And I feel like Minnesota, this whole day, we posted who's going to win the NFC North, and basically the consensus was between two teams, the Vikings and the Packers. You have the Vikings who feel like they're on the up and up because their main problem was Mike Zimmer and the defense. And one of those problems is cured, and one of those is currently pending that we have no idea what it's going to be yet. And then you have the Green Bay Packers who have done it for so long, there's really no reason to pick against the Green Bay Packers ever. You look at this team up and down, left and right, diagonally. You got Cousins, you got Cook, you got Jefferson, Thielen. KJ Osborne filled in a little bit well last year. Irv Smith Jr., I pray to God he's healthy. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
I I think he could be a great tight end. They got Christian Darrisaw, who they drafted. I think he's really great. Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury, Jesse Davis, Brian O'Neill. They don't have the best line in the world, but Kirk has had some time to throw the deep ball when he's needed to. And I think that was one of the big things last year for Kirk, is getting the deep ball to Jefferson, getting those TDs to Adam Thielen, because Adam Thielen snipes every TD I've ever seen in my life. But you look at this defense: Harrison Phillips, Dalvin Tomlinson, Daniil Hunter, Eric Kendricks, Jordan Hicks. They signed Za'Darius Smith. They got Patrick Peterson. Harrison Smith is one of the better strong safeties in the game. They drafted Lewis.
Seen.
I couldn't remember how to say it. But
safety out of Georgia.
But yeah, they have a solid safety duo now. Harrison Smith has been a really good safety for a while, and now they have Seen back there with them.
And they also got Andrew Booth Jr. out of Florida. He was one of the top 5 corner prospects coming out of this year as well.
They went out and did what they were supposed to do. They fixed exactly the problem that we felt like they had the most, and that was defense. They played a lot of close games last year. They played a lot of high-scoring games last year, and if they can keep those down, they can keep defenses really to 21, 24 points. It feels like that team can put up 28 points a game. I know they're not going to every single game, but it feels like the weapons are there to do it with the Minnesota Vikings. The problem I have is that the Vikings, and I get this happens to every team. I get that every single great team loses to one bad team once or twice a year. For the Vikings, that seems to double. They seem to have about 3 or 4 games that they let slip away every single time. One of them was being the Cowboys game. They played the Cowboys. Dak was out. They got to play against Cooper Rush. They couldn't put up more than 10 points. Yes, Dallas's defense was a little better last year, but you feel like with that offense, you were supposed to put up more than 10 points on Sunday Night Football. But Kirk Cousins in prime time, that's just this weird anomaly that just never makes sense. What do you got? What do you got for the Vikings?
So I wasted a lot of breath last year trying to convince myself that Minnesota's going to win this division. I'm going to talk a lot about them, but I'm not going to waste my breath. This team is not winning the division. This team might make a wild card berth, but it's just 1 step forward and 2 steps back. This was the best offensive year the Vikings have gotten out of a quarterback since Brett Favre resurrected himself using pigskin and scented candles. Big thing with the Minnesota Vikings is they have the toughest strength of schedule out of anybody in this division. And their defense, while it is improved, was arguably the worst in this division. They allowed the most yards per game. They allowed the second most rushing yards per game, the most passing yards per game, allowed the second lowest QBR. They did get to the quarterback a lot. They led the division in sacks. They led the division in third down percentage. But in points per game, they were second to last, right in front of Detroit. This is a defense that is going to have to improve exponentially in order for this team to catch Green Bay and hopefully thwart off Detroit. And the offense was great last year. But is Kevin O'Connell going to literally reinvent the wheel and have Kirk Cousins throw for 5,000 yards and have Dalvin Cook play 17 games? I can't fucking guarantee that. I think it would be disingenuous to go against a guy in Matt LaFleur who's won 13 games every year he's ever coached. It's insane to me at this point. Prove me once, prove me wrong, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Fool me 3 times, you can't get fooled again. Mike Zimmer probably cost this team 6 wins alone last year. Dalvin Cook has to be healthy, and they cannot afford anyone from Jefferson, Thielen, or Osborne to miss time. Because once you get past their top 3 receivers, it's a whole lot of nobodies. And I apologize to anybody named Bissy Johnson, Jalen Naylor, and Amir Smith-Marset, and anybody else in that depth chart. It's no offense to you or your family's namesake, but who the hell are you?
Well, and the thing is, too, is that I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to say this. I don't think anybody thought Justin Jefferson was a bad wide receiver last year. But if it's now more prevalent than ever, Justin Jefferson is a top 3 wide receiver in the league and will seek every attention possible that you can put on him. Adam Thielen, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, without Adam Thielen's a touchdown machine. No matter how old he gets, I feel like he'll be catching touchdowns at 65.
They both finished 10 touchdowns, and he missed 7 games. Yeah.
I feel like Adam Thielen is one of the perfect complements for a number one guy like Justin Jefferson because he just finds ways in the flat, in the curl, deep down, these crosses. He's able to find the end zone nearly every time. And he's a freaking touchdown machine. And he's exactly what the Vikings need to stay healthy. Will he stay healthy? I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
think he can. Let's see how old he is. 31. Okay, so he's not as old as I thought he was. But still, 10 touchdowns? 10 touchdowns in how many games? Missed half the season almost?
damn near. Yeah, it was crazy. My thing right now with this team is with the Minnesota Vikings. They took away a key contributor to this Packers defense that we'll talk about shortly in Preston Smith. They were able to add him, or they got Zadarius.
Zadarius.
They pried away one of the Smiths from Green Bay. They picked up Zadarius Smith to add to their already pretty solid defense in terms of namesake. So not only am I going to have to assume that Zadarius was the better Smith and Green Bay's defense takes a step back, I'm going to have to also assume that Green Bay's offense takes a step back as well with the loss of Devonta Adams, which is a very likely possibility. But it's a lot easier to bet on Aaron Rodgers sustaining production versus Kirk Cousins. It's a lot easier to bet on Matt LaFleur sustaining production as opposed to a first-year head coach. I think Minnesota is a team that's window is right now, and they do not have any more years to waste. Kirk Cousins is as good as he's ever going to be. Dalvin Cook is going to be as good as he's ever going to be. Justin Jefferson is the only player that I see being able to age with whatever window this team has. But if they're not going to compete 5 years down the road, there's no point in having him. Kendricks and Harrison Smith are only getting older. Zadarius is only getting older. And while I do like the additions of Seen and a guy like Andrew Booth Jr., Patrick Peterson is a guy that 2 years ago everybody thought was cooked. This is a defense that has been molded by spare parts from the castaways of other teams in hopes to try and rekindle some form of semblance of a top defense. I think if it all clicks, they could be a very impressive team, but it's going to take a lot for me to be fully convinced that this team can compete at the upper echelon of the NFC. I think that even Green Bay has proven me wrong in the past. But sadly, Green Bay gets to beat up on Detroit and Aaron Rodgers' own favorite team, the Chicago Bears, because he's a part-time owner. But the biggest thing about this Minnesota Vikings team is I'm not going to push my chips in. I'm just not going to do it. They have the talent, and they've had the talent. They didn't have the coaching. If they figured out the coaching, I think this could be a 10-win team. But seeing is believing, and after Matt LaFleur has given us a track record of 13 wins every single year he steps out, there's no point in assuming that they're not going to win more than 11 games in Green Bay, even with Devonta Adams leaving.
And I think we're going to talk about this every single time we talk about the NFC East. Your competition is significantly worse than if you were in the AFC. Your time to make a Super Bowl is right now. You can beat whoever comes out of the East, whether it be the Cowboys or the Eagles, you can beat them. Okay?
Well,
you look out west. If you catch the Rams at a right time, you can beat them. You can beat the Niners. You can beat anybody in your division. They've beaten the Packers. They can do it. Your biggest competition is Tom fucking Brady.
Even then, there's question marks around this Tampa Bay offense. They just signed Julio Jones, but who's Julio Jones at this point? Godwin coming off the ACL.
If you want to put yourselves in a position to win, you have one of the best running backs in the game. You have a top 15 quarterback who's put up really good numbers last year and could do it again. You have a top 3 wide receiver. You have one of the best complements to a wide receiver. You've made signings to make your defense better. You've made draft picks to make your defense better. Your time is right now. I understand you're in a division with the Packers, but you could easily be a 5th seed, a 6th seed, a 7th seed.
To kind of bring things full circle for this Minnesota team that you could say we're being a little harsh upon, I view Minnesota in the completely opposite light of the Las Vegas Raiders. Minnesota, obviously Oakland added Devonta Adams, but outside of that, they've lost a key lineman. Minnesota's returning almost their entire offensive line, and Minnesota's defense has improved. These are both teams that at capacity could be 9-10 win teams, but I do believe Minnesota has a far better defense and arguably a better head coach. So if there was a Dr. Jekyll and a Mr. Hyde to teams that have talent, but I don't fully believe in, Mr. Hyde is the Vegas Raiders. I don't believe in them. I think they should finish fourth in their division. The Minnesota Vikings are Dr. Jekyll. I think if everything goes right, they have a shot to win their division, and they should be looked as a dangerous opponent in any playoff game. Because if everything goes right for Minnesota, this is a team that 4 or 5 years ago, led by Case fucking Keenum, was one game away from a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, and a bunch of those defensive pieces are still kind of there. Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks were there. Kirk Cousins obviously wasn't. I think Dalvin Cook was like a rookie. Adam Thielen played for those teams. You have guys that know how to win games, that have experienced winning. This feels like kind of like a last hurrah, because Kirk's not going to keep getting 2-year deals if they keep not making the playoffs or getting bounced in the first round.
Right.
It's a team that I am pessimistic of, but I remain optimistic at their top end. So in terms of talent, I don't think there are many teams in the NFC that you could look roster for roster and say they're definitively better than the Vikings. Their biggest problems are the X's and O's and actually staying on the field. So they are to be decided. I'll put a TBD. They're finishing second in the division. It's basically been their namesake since Aaron Rodgers took over. So we'll leave it at that. Unless you
and Kirk Cousins is about to be 34 years old, and you're kind of in a spot where, because of Mike Zimmer, you have no idea what Kellen Mond is. He literally gave him no looks whatsoever. Sean Manning is definitely not your quarterback of the future.
Yeah.
So really, you can keep paying Kirk to a point. He's going to, like I said, he's going to be 34 this year. I don't know if last year was his peak, if he can repeat it, if he can do a little better, if he's going to do a lot worse. At some point, he's going to hit the age threshold that everybody except Tom Brady hits, and he's going to regress significantly.
Well, if we're going to be blatantly honest, if I were a Vikings fan, my greatest fear this season is another about 500 finish, because the Vikings are in for a very rude awakening. The big thing with the best contenders in football, there's 5 key aspects, in my opinion, that greatly determine if you're a Super Bowl contender or not. You need quarterback, receiver, edge, line, and secondary. Those are the 5 pillars of any championship contender. You have to have guys on the outside. You have to have guys on your offensive line. You have to have guys on the edge, and the quarterback, and a number 1 receiver. Minnesota, for their history, has been the farm system for top wideouts in the league. We've seen it over the last 20 years. Randy Moss and Stephon Diggs. Player A, Player B, and if you want to include Chemical X, Percy Harvin. You've got very talented players that have come through this system and put up monster numbers just to have their best years with other franchises. So if I'm the Vikings, you bet your ass I'm trying to win now. Because if Justin Jefferson has no reason to believe that this franchise can actually help him win a Super Bowl, he will be demanding top dollar, which we saw in this offseason is about $20+ million a year for guys like Christian Kirk. The rent is due, and the price is constantly going up. I said this whenever Mike Williams signed his extension. Any deal that was signed yesterday is better than the deal you'll see than you're going to see today. Because
and the thing is we talk about all the time is like the Bengals. They have a lot of money. They had a lot of money to spend because they have Joe Burrow on a rookie deal,
and Jamar Chase.
And Jamar Chase. The quarterback that we talk about so much that you have to win while he's on a rookie deal, wide receiver is slowly walking into that conversation because they're making pretty close to money. Deebo Samuel making $25 million a year. Cooper Kupp's making about $25 million a year. DK Metcalf. Like, all these guys are getting close. And at some point, obviously the cap slightly goes up and the cap doesn't really exist. New Orleans Saints, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. There's workarounds.
But
that's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. We just saw this offseason, the 2019 rookie class got paid. There were 4 wideouts under questioning. A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and Terry McLaurin. They each got 3 to 4 year deals. Each got about damn near $60 million, $60 million guaranteed, and it's about like $80 million over the lifetime of the contract, give or take, sparing details. Probably closer to 50 in guaranteed money. But if you think Deebo Samuel got paid, if you think Terry McLaurin got paid, if you think fucking A.J. Brown or DK Metcalf got paid, just wait until Justin Jefferson's due for an extension. The only player that is comparable to Justin Jefferson right now is himself, unless Jamar Chase repeats what he did last year. Justin Jefferson broke the record for receiving yards for a rookie, if I'm correct, until Jamar Chase broke it. And then Jefferson followed that up with 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson is the best young receiver in the game, and it's not close. What he provides to this team at his contract number is insane. And to think that the Eagles could have had him as opposed to trading for a guy in A.J. Brown is absolutely disgusting. So for me, if I'm Minnesota, they better hope they get 10 to 12 wins this year, because if they can't figure it out right now when Green Bay is kind of on the ropes, when? Because I just don't see an end in sight.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Chicago at the start of their tunnel. I feel like Minnesota's been in a tunnel since Brett Favre left. And there's been highs and there's been lows, but
because they're at the problem that they're constantly finishing around the 500 mark, and they've made the playoffs and they can't beat certain teams. They can't get past the hump that is the San Francisco 49ers. They've gotten torched by them twice, I believe. So is Green Bay, but they got by the Saints and then they lost, and then they, finished like 8 and 9. Like being stuck at a 500 spot is one of the worst places to be. You need to be on either side of the spectrum. You either got to build your way up to get to the other side, or you got to be on the other side. You can't be in the middle. And
100%.
That's exactly where they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Last team. The team we're both picking to win in the division. I decided I just can't pick against the Green Bay Packers. So hit me with it.
So Green Bay. This team could be really bad if everything breaks the wrong way. Aaron Rodgers is old. I don't know if anybody realizes this. He's like 38 now, give or take. He's up there. And I know Aaron Rodgers is like Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old. Do I expect him to fall off a cliff? No, but did we expect Peyton Manning to jump into the toilet his final year? No. The thing about quarterbacks and aging in sports is it hits like a freight train, and it's unexpected. Tom Brady has defied the football gods for the last 6 years, and good for him. Tom Brady takes immense care of his own body in ways that I have never even tried to fathom. LeBron James, 20th year in the league, averaged 30 points per game. He invests $1.5 million into his body annually. There are reasons why these players are aging extremely well. But Aaron Rodgers, for the first time in his career since I would say the early 2010s, does not have an undisputed wide receiver one. He went from playing with guys like Donald Driver and Greg Jennings to Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb to Devontae Adams and insert name here. Randall Cobb for a portion, and then you have Alan Lazard, I guess. This team not only did this team lose Devontae Adams, they lost another deep threat in MVS, who I think is arguably more talented than anybody else they have on the roster. The big appeal for this team is they have a defense that overachieved last year in the absence of one of the best corners in football and a guy in Jair Alexander. He only played 4 games. That's huge. This is a team that has a vacation. There's a vacated amount of targets that sits at 169, if I'm correct, in this offense. So it comes to the question, do I believe they have the talent to fill the void of 169 targets? I think they have some talent. Sammy Watkins is a player that was a former first-round pick. Christian Watson is a receiver that came out of North Dakota State. Well, I'm not sure if he starts the year playing, and that's the biggest thing with this team. If they're fully healthy, I like their prospects a lot. You come back with Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVPs, Matt LaFleur, basically a perennial coach of the year candidate because he's constantly winning 13 games. It's like clockwork at this point. He wakes up, he eats, he sleeps, 13 wins, NFC title game or divisional round. You've got A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, the best running back tandem in the league in terms of yin to yang and overall talent. In my opinion, the things that Jones does directly complement Dillon, and I think Dillon is arguably the most underrated running back in the league today based upon raw talent and just overall physicality. And even after you get past their top 3 in Lazard, Christian Watson, and Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb and Amari Rodgers are decent receivers. I wouldn't coin them good due to Cobb's age and the nature of Amari Rodgers being somewhat unproven, but Amari Rodgers is talented. Robert Tonyan is the question mark. Will he be ready at the start of the season due to his ACL tear earlier last year? Bakhtiari had another knee surgery in the offseason. Bakhtiari has to be healthy. If Bakhtiari can't be on the field for Aaron Rodgers, this offensive line is worse. John Runyon, a solid piece. Josh Myers played really well last year. Elton Jenkins is out on their depth chart right now. If this offensive line cannot be healthy and stay healthy, Rodgers will be on his back more often than not. And I don't like Aaron on the ground because while his career has not been riddled with injuries, whenever Aaron gets hit, he has been susceptible to miss games. Bears game, he broke his collarbone. There's been instances where we've seen Aaron get like chinks in the armor. So they need to protect him. He's 38 years old. His bones are becoming weaker. It's just how people age. The bright spot for this team, the defense. I think this defense, while they have lost pieces, especially with a guy like Zadarius Smith, Kenny Clark is a really, really good nose tackle, and you've got your edge defenders in Dean Lowry, Jerron Reed, and they added Devontae Wyatt, who had character issues coming into the draft, but based upon pure raw talent on that Georgia defensive line, he was a force and should have been an early first-round pick if it weren't for the character questions that arose throughout the process. You're returning a linebacking crew that has Preston Smith, Devondre Campbell, Quay Walker as a rookie, and Rashawn Gary. That is one of the better linebacker platoons that I think I can name in the league right now. Preston Smith has been an all-pro caliber linebacker for the last 3 to 4 years. Devondre Campbell finished last year as the Packers' leading tackler. And let me pull up the numbers real quick. Devondre Campbell last year had 145 combined tackles, 101 being solo. This is a man that is going to swallow up running backs and be able to tackle people in the open field. You pair that with a guy in Quay Walker, who was one of the hardest hitting linebackers in college football last year, a bit undersized, but you pair him with Devondre Campbell, I think they're going to complement each other extremely well. And now we're looking at Rashawn Gary. While he didn't per se have a huge impact in terms of just overall tackles, he was really good for this defense. And now we're looking at what I believe is the biggest strength of this team, the secondary. Strong safety of Adrian Amos, a proven veteran that has over time been one of the more consistent players in the secondary. Free safety, you have Darnell Savage, someone that is kind of a ball hawk, can hit pretty hard. The corner room. This is the best assemblage of cornerbacks in the division, and it is not close. Whenever he is on and healthy, Jair Alexander is a top 3 corner, and I'm not counting him at number 3. I think he is number 2. For me, at corner in the league right now, it's Jalen Ramsey, Marshawn Lattimore, Jair Alexander, and any given week you can shuffle those names because they are that good. And then you have on the other side, Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas was one of the biggest surprises that we saw out of Green Bay in general. And Eric Stokes is a all-league type corner. So for the step that I think the offense may take, the step back that I think the offense might take with the loss of Devontae Adams, I think this defense is poised to be just as good as they were last year, if not better. They have the bodies, they have the depth, and this secondary is not going to allow teams that have Justin Fields, Jared Goff, or even Kirk Cousins to outshoot them in any given matchup.
Yeah, so this team is just what they've been doing for so long. They went 13-4, and they dropped the last game of the year to the Lions, but they were the number 1 seed. They got their bye. They did exactly what they needed to do. So realistically, they could have finished 14-3. I feel like if they really wanted to. A lot of people were, picking the Packers. A lot of people were picking the Vikings. And I think the biggest thing is the Packers are in the same spot that the Chiefs are in for me. You are my pick until you prove me otherwise, because you just seem better than everyone else around you in your division. Yes, Devontae Adams is gone, and yes, Devontae Adams has great route running skills and great hands and gets open. But how many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers drop an absolute dime in the smallest window possible to Devontae Adams? And you tell me that he can't do that with anybody else? He certainly can. At some point, he'll regress due to old age, but maybe he won't. Maybe the State Farm commercials keep him alive or something. Maybe I don't know. But Aaron Rodgers has done it for so long. He's a multiple-time MVP. There's no reason for me to believe that just because you take away his best receiver, that he's not going to turn one of those other receivers into a great one. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon is arguably the best duo in the league. It frustrated me as a Aaron Jones fantasy owner last year, but I can't deny what A.J. Dillon brings to the team as a power runner, and Aaron Jones is one of the best receiving backs in the league, if not the best receiving back in the league. You talked about the defense. Rasul Douglas took a lot of great opportunities last year with Jair Alexander out, and he really stepped up big time and got paid for it. He really got rewarded for his great year last year. And you're telling me that they played a lot of those games without Jair Alexander and they still had a really good defense most of the time? Sign me up. Sign me up for the Green Bay Packers. Honestly, the only really biggest concern about this team for me feels like Mason Crosby.
Yeah.
Like,
Crosby
really,
kicks, it's going to be bad.
Crosby missed almost 25% of kicks last year. That's a lot of kicks to miss. Remember the Bengals fiasco game where they missed and missed and missed and missed and missed? That can't happen. He missed a field goal against the Niners, and easily that game could have gone into overtime, tied at 13. I get it. It's snowy, and I will never be able to kick a football as far as Mason Crosby does. But at the same time, he was an issue last year, and a lot of people questioned Mason Crosby. And I don't think the Packers are going to go away from Mason Crosby because kickers, even great kickers at this point, are so hard to find. It really seems like a lot of teams have a merry-go-round of kickers that they have to throw around and pray to God they can hit it. I mean, you and I both know that. We had Greg Zuerlein, and we were missing a lot of kicks, and Chargers kickers have missed kicks for decades, and now you actually have a kicker hitting kicks. Feels good. Wins games. 3 points matters a lot. Taking the 3 matters a lot. That really feels like the biggest detriment to this team if Mason Crosby has another. Oh, he had a 73.5% year, so he missed over 25% of his kicks. I'm not really going to worry about extra points. He hit 96% of extra points, no big deal. But he was 28th in the league in field goal percentage. That just can't happen, especially if you're going to go into the playoffs and try to get that Super Bowl. And we don't have to talk about this in a ton now, but how many more times can Matt LaFleur go 13-4 and then get knocked out of the playoffs until it's like, what do you do? I get it. Going 13-4 is fucking great. I would love to go 13-4 every single year. I would love to see my team in the playoffs every single year, guaranteed, because we're going 13-4. But at some point, when you can't get over the hump, something's got to give.
Yeah. I think a big thing for this team, for the Packers, for all the concerns I have about their receiver room, because I think that could be the biggest hindrance. I think the Mason Crosby thing, if it rears its ugly head, they have Gabe Burkick in the wings as a backup kicker that I think they will just cut ties to Mason Crosby and say, fuck it, we will win with this guy, because they cannot afford Crosby to have them held back by any means. The market for wide receiver, there's still some names that can make an impact for the Green Bay Packers. 2 names that I'm going to circle right now in terms of players that I think could come in and actually provide value with an Aaron Rodgers under center: T.Y. Hilton and Odell Beckham Jr. Current free agents that Green Bay could sign and immediately have like effectively a 1 or 2 in their room. Because this is a team that Rodgers is talented enough to hit guys in stride. It doesn't matter if you're the one receiver. He peppered Devontae Adams. Was that more Nathaniel Hackett, or was that A-Rod just preferentially trying to feed Devontae Adams? Because the relationship between a quarterback and their number 1 wide receiver is important, and you have to feed your guys. But there is talent to be had, and I think anybody that's bought out Green Bay is an ample location for any talent to seek asylum for the back half of the year. So whatever holes they may have in this roster, I think they have some flexibility cap-wise, and they have some ingenuity as a front office to get things done. They've invested in Aaron. They gave Aaron an extension that pays him a lot of money, to the point where they had to trade Devontae Adams. So to sit here and not provide Aaron weapons would be just asinine and absolutely flabbergasting, in my opinion. So I do not.
Hasn't that been the MO for years? Like, I get it. He's had Devontae Adams. But you want to just go through the joke that is not drafting a first-round wide receiver. We can make that joke all we want. I get it. Devontae Adams was, a second-round wide receiver? And he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer at this point because he's so good, even despite downgrading quarterbacks. I still think he'll be a Hall of Famer just because of his route running skills and his hands. But, I mean, you get what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying, but I will raise you the point that out of the top 10 receivers in football today, can you name which ones were first-round picks? So give me your top 10. Just give me your top 10 receivers.
I don't know if I can name 10 off the top of my head. Let's be fair here. But Jefferson, Cup, Adams, Hill, Diggs.
I'll just look up top 10 wide receivers and just get a general list.
There you go. I gave you 5.
Okay.
You can think of 5 off the top of my head.
Number 10, A.J. Brown. Number 9, Keenan Allen. So A.J. Brown, 2nd round pick. Keenan Allen, 4th round pick. Deebo Samuel, 2nd round pick. Mike Evans was a 1st rounder. Tyreek Hill wasn't a 1st rounder. Stephon Diggs. What round was Stephon Diggs drafted in? I don't think he was a 1st rounder either. Stephon Diggs was a 5th round pick. Cooper Kupp, 4th or 5th rounder. Jamar Chase, 1st round pick. Justin Jefferson, 1st round pick. Devontae Adams, I believe, 6th round. Aaron bitching about not having talent drafted in the 1st round, I think, is more of a testament to Green Bay being patient and just having bad luck in the back half of drafts. Because at receiver, if you're drafting perennially in the 1st round, your team will really not see much benefit until you're getting a 2nd contract for that 1st round talent.
That's fair. So just let me pivot to this then. Because that's just been like the running joke, right? It's like, Green Bay hasn't done this, Green Bay hasn't done that. They drafted Jordan Love, blah, 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 blah. But now he just really doesn't have any help. Allen Lazard is his number 1. Am I wrong? Is that most likely his number 1?
He's charted as the number 1. I think Sammy Watkins is probably the most talented on the roster aside from Christian Watson. I just think Lazard's the incumbent, so people expect him to get the targets.
But what's stopping them from grabbing an Odell or a T.Y. Hilton? I think that would be massive for them.
I was surprised they didn't grab Julio. He was just out there for months, and no one decided, hey, Julio Jones could work. Obviously, his injuries raise a red flag, but Green Bay, for their faults in their perimeter-oriented passing game, they could be a suitor for Will Fuller whenever he comes off the suspension. This is a team that's going to be able to add talent. And with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who most believe to be a top 3 quarterback ever, top 5 at the worst, if you give him the talent, the wins will come. So, and if Tanyan's healthy,
the wins are going to come without the talent.
Yeah, exactly. Aaron Rodgers,
it's going to be the big wins that'll come with talent.
So Aaron Rodgers' career statistics. So I'm just going to look up Rodgers on Pro Football Reference real quick. And I'm just going to give you a year-by-year record of Aaron Rodgers since he took over the job as the starter. So nothing recorded until 2008 when he took over the job. So every fully healthy year he has had since 2009. 11-5, 10-5, 14-1, 11-5, 12-4, 10-6, 10-6. 2018 they went 6-9-1, which honestly, looking back, that's crazy.
I don't even remember that.
That can't be right. Let me see. Packers 2018 record. That's not right.
Something feels so wrong now in the middle of research.
It went 6-9-1. Holy crap! I forgot. Never mind. That was McCarthy's last year, if I'm correct. Why is this?
But anyways,
okay. Let me just.
The thing is, that one little more talent piece could get them over the hump they need to go. We know they're going to go 12-5 or 13-4. When they got mollywopped by the Saints in week 1, we all thought it was over. And Aaron Rodgers played with 9 toes last year. Aaron Rodgers said he was playing in a shit ton of pain last year. And if he plays like that in a shit ton of pain, he's going to play better when he's healthy. If he's able to get Bob Tonyan, who I am not going to put as like, oh, Bob Tonyan's a top 10 tight end, but he's a great target for Aaron Rodgers. He's the perfect kind of target for Aaron Rodgers. He gets open and he, takes the ball really well. I like Bob Tonyan a lot. He's not going to jump off the page at you, but he's a great fit for Aaron Rodgers. But I just don't know if Allen Lazard, Sammy Watkins, and Christian Watson do it for me. Am I going to pick him to win the division? Sure. There's no reason for me not to.
So a big thing with Rodgers, and back to the point I was making, I was on the advanced stats page, which stopped at 2019 for some reason. So So including every year he has been the starter, minusing seasons whenever he missed most of the season for injury, you looked at 2008, he went 6-10 as effectively his first year as a starter. And then in 2018, they went 6-9-1. Beyond that, Rodgers went 11-5, 10-5, 14-1, 11-5-0, 12-4, 10-6, 10-6, 13-3, 13-3, 13-3. He's effectively 10 to 12 wins baseline for every year that he plays. And it's one thing to sit here and say, well, Devontae Adams, you're vacating 1,000 yards and so many touchdowns. Do I expect Aaron Rodgers to throw more than 10 interceptions this coming year without Devontae Adams? No. It would take his receivers dropping passes at an alarming rate and giving picks to the defense, which I don't see happening. The floor, the ceiling of this team is greatly hurt without Devontae Adams, but the floor is baked in. Aaron Rodgers is a guaranteed 10 wins until he's not. And I haven't seen enough this offseason to signify, or even last year to signify, that he doesn't have it. So do I expect Matt LaFleur to continue the 13-3 or 13-4 streak? Probably not. But do I expect them to win at least 10 games? You're damn right. This is a team that is too good at a lot of the key spots that I've mentioned before to not win at least 10 games.
They went from a Super Bowl contender to a Super Bowl contender. Like what? Yeah. I don't know what you want me to tell you. Are they going to run into the Niners again and probably get knocked out? Yeah, probably.
They went from the third best team in the NFC to maybe the fifth, essentially. It was marginal at best. There was no exponential decline for Green Bay.
Yeah.
Like it's Tampa, LA, SF, and then you can include Green Bay at 4. There's maybe one other team in the NFC that I'm forgetting. Probably not.
The New York Giants.
Daniel Jones just sitting there.
Mike Glennon to the top. Like it's that neck power, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Put that shit in sport mode.
But yeah, we both had the Packers winning. We both had the Vikings winning, finishing second, Lions in third, Bears in last. But I think the Bears are going to be a bottom 3 team. I think the Packers are going to be a top 3 team. Can the Vikings slip in 5, 6, or 7? I think so. I think the competition around 5, 6, and 7 is a little weaker than normal. Mainly, you're kind of looking at the Saints, the Niners, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. And obviously, one of those 2 teams has to win the division because I think the Rams are going to win the division, so they're not in the wild card slot. But I don't know who's going to win the NFC East, but then you have the team who's not going to win the NFC East trying to get in that slot. But there's not a whole lot of competition pushing you out of the way like there is in the AFC. Lions, we talked about it. They just got to be a little bit better. Slowly but surely. Any positive regression, that's not how that works. That's an oxymoron. Any positive going up, I'm over it.
This is the division of stagnation in a way that I think the NFC East feels like it is because everybody's just 500.
Yeah.
This is the one division. The NFC North is effectively the punch card in all of our lives. We walk up, we look at it, we punch the card, and the teams fall where they've always fallen. Yep. With 1 or 2 years where we're like, holy shit, Chicago won 12 games. But beyond that, it's clockwork. Death, taxes, and Aaron Rodgers owning this division.
So with that, we're going to end there. Next week, we'll move on to the AFC North, which will be a much, much bigger discussion for sure. A lot of better teams. Mike Tomlin finding a way to get over 500.
Cleveland having the 5th easiest schedule in the league, weeks 1 through 6.
Yeah. And we know about the Deshaun Watson situation. We're not political. We're not going to get into it super hard. It's as simple as this. We do not agree with the judge's decision on Deshaun Watson, and we'll talk about it more when we get to the Browns next week.
The organization of the NFL is not as problematic. The NFL itself can blame itself for the ruling, the precedents they set, and the lack of accountability for their players and lack of just consistency in punishments. It's a myriad of issues that have led to the ruling that I think the NFL should appeal, but we will see in time.
Yeah. So we'll get to all that next week. In terms of baseball, we know the MLB trade deadline's going on. We'll be posting throughout the week because that's a wild ride too. So talk with us on Twitter as always. We had over 150 people check in with us today live. So that's awesome. If you're watching the replay, thanks for watching. We'll have timestamps and everything. You can talk about you can check in later, watch your favorite team, talk how we just smash your team and say everybody's bad and the Detroit Lions are your Super Bowl champions, and Dan Campbell is holding up a world title belt and all this, all that. You missed it, but it's okay. 3 down, 5 to go, brother. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Yep, one division at a time. And to all of our Spotify listeners, hopefully there weren't any loud pops or, periods where you're speaking too low. But we appreciate you for sticking in there. And if we trash your favorite team, let us know about it in the reviews, I guess. Just leave 5 stars. Austin, if there's nothing left from you, I think it's just as simple as leaving them with the one word of the week.
Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. Like the video. Interact with us. We're always willing to interact with you guys back. I'll let Devin send you off.
Sweet. Well, as always, this has been Devin, and that's been Austin. We thank you for tuning in. And shout out the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers, part-time owner of the Chicago Bears, da Bears. And from me to all of you listening, peace.